at school on the first day of Lent, we used to be given a smudge of ash on our foreheads. And although we were fully aware of the seriousness of the moment, to be honest, by the time we got back to school, it was more about showing off who had the biggest smudge of ash on their foreheads. Now, obviously, decades later, that smudge of ash has a far greater poignancy for me, as it would any other adult, because it's a reminder of our need to repent, and it's a reminder of our mortality. And that is what Lent is partly about. But it's also about a time of waiting, of anticipation. And that's a bit like our lives, really. Whatever else we're distracting ourselves with, we're waiting for the time when all will be revealed, when chaos doesn't reign, and when we understand why good things sometimes happen to bad people, what we think are bad people, and why bad things happen to apparently good people. All this injustice that's within the world will be fully explained, and that's a wonderful thing to look forward to. And we know that a light, as believers, will be shed upon all this, and so really we shouldn't worry too much about those things. But Lent isn't mentioned in the Bible as a lead up to Easter. It's more really like Advent, I suppose. And 40 days can be a microcosm of life, leading up to Holy Week, where everything happens. We go from the celebratory high of Palm Sunday to the goodbye of the Last Supper and the days of sorrow that immediately follow. And in our own lives we have highs and lows, days of absolute delight and days of possibly despair. And look at the experiences that Jesus goes through even in 1 week. He's wanted and revered 1 minute, only to be persecuted by the same people the next. Now, can you remember a time when you were given a show of affection publicly, but you knew deeply that it hid sort of a dislike, a private dislike? Can you imagine for Jesus then, when Judas Iscariot comes up to kiss him publicly, only as a way of identifying him for arrest and then murder? And have you ever felt that you were sold off a little bit cheaply, maybe by a system that you had great faith in? And imagine then how much it must have felt like to have your life valued at measly 30 pieces of silver. Now, I've found out, I think roughly, that is about £200-300 these days. I could be wrong, but I felt hard done by when I sold a car for that. Now, has anyone said to you that they'd be there for you, and when you hit rock bottom, they're just not around? Well, how much worse it must have been for Jesus to find that those he loved so much, when he was going through utter despair in the Garden of Gethsemane, only to find that all those who were around him were asleep, including us now, because our lives are really full of sleep, aren't they? Well, imagine what it was like for him when his anguish turned into drops of blood in his sweat, and then he turns around and everyone's asleep. Have you ever felt betrayed by someone that you valued, whose opinion that you valued? Well, imagine sharing a meal with someone. You're looking directly across the table at them, and you share a bowl with them, and you know that person is about to have you put to death, and that person actually saying, "What, me, Lord? Won't be me." Can you imagine that form of betrayal? Now, Jesus could have changed the course of events at any point, but he doesn't, because God knows that for man to be delivered of his sins, our biggest threat, death, had to be overcome, and that death had to be at the hands of human injustice. So just as the human narrative is scrambled with lies and deceit and manipulation, self-delusion, blatant injustice, these evils also surrounded the betrayal and death of Jesus. But his story is so different from the human story. He has the most amazing denouement. His story has the most amazing twist of events, just as ours can do if we believe. His story has the greatest punchline ever, because the stone is rolled away and the face cap napkin is neatly folded. And Jesus shows us that our biggest fear, death, has been overcome. And the folding napkin says it all. I'm coming back. So both in our personal lives and as citizens, we experience adversity, disappointment again and again. But we know as believers in our hearts that there is a far greater truth. We know that deep down there is something more authentic than the flimsy distortions and lies that surround us and the ones that are within us. We can't always give it words, but we know it's there. And at the end though, all will be revealed. After the fickleness of man's truth, our truth, my truth, will come the firmness of God's truth. No matter how well we deceive ourselves and how well others cleverly deceive reality around us, rearrange reality around us, it doesn't really matter, because the truth will come out in all its painful glory one day. That wonderful, glorious, shining, blinding white truth that will shatter me, you, everyone, but will rebuild me, you and everyone if we believe. So Lent, our lives, is a time of waiting, of anticipation that takes us slowly and sometimes painfully to a cross shaped in the letter T for truth. God's truth that will explain everything, not through a double-blind, peer-reviewed piece of investigation, but through love. It's that truth we know exists in our hearts, that is always there, but gets smothered by the white noise of humanity and our egos. Thank goodness we're given a time to repent and repair. So please, if you'll pray for me, and I'll pray for you, to make the best use of this global Lent or lockdown.